What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name is Kyle. Tonight, it is Thursday evening, March 9th. We're just going to hang out and go over some fantasy basketball news and some player stuff for you guys to get you through to the next round of the fantasy playoffs. For me, it's round one of the fantasy playoffs, so next week should be your final fours. Wherever you're at, we're going to get you ready for the playoffs, and hopefully we can get you guys to the championship. So let's hop into a screen share. And I guess the biggest news on pretty much everyone's mind is Kevin Durant's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So that's going to potentially open up some spots there on Phoenix. But we'll get to that in a second. I think we're going to go by team, and I'll kind of just quickly, just go through each team and let you guys know which players should be picked up or rostered during the remaining stretch. But I wanted to show the top added players here on ESPN and what they've been averaging the last 7 days, because there's a lot of good pickups potentially, whether you're in an 8, 10, or 12-man league. But DeLon Wright's got the biggest spike in percent rostership here. He's up almost 17%, averaging 35 points per game over the last 7 nights, and 26% rostered. So get DeLon Wright. Of course, get Tyus Jones if you still can. Emmanuel quickly had that massive big game the other night in double overtime. Jalen Williams. Then there's Chris Dunn, and he's been getting some more run because Colin Sexton's been out. I know Talon Horton-Tucker's been getting some run too, but you see some really nice minutes here from Chris Dunn. He's definitely a guy that's worth picking up. Cam Reddish for the Trailblazers here, he's averaging 30 points per game. You got Tari Eason, he's averaging 30 points per game. Marvin Bagley. Let's see here. Oubre is well owned, but I want to talk about Xavier Tillman because I did see Steven Adams is going to be reevaluated in another 4 weeks, so that's a pretty big deal. And Tillman's been on fire lately. He's pretty much a walking double-double. He's going to get you assists, steals, and blocks as well. Just fantastic numbers the last couple weeks. So Tillman's a must-add, I think, in all formats right now. And then a couple other guys I'll just shout out real quick. Tim Hardaway. You got Cam Johnson, Matisse Thybulle, Kuminga. You also have Austin Reeves getting some more minutes there with no LeBron. So those are just some players off the top of my head. Even Jeremy Sohan here, TJ McConnell, Moritz Wagner. But let's get into it. Let's just go through Atlanta. I just want to see who's been wheeling and dealing for them the last handful of days. We're going to go by average and see if anyone's sticking out here. So DeAndre Hunter, he's under 20% roster. He's averaging 21.6 points per game. High minutes, good scorer, rebounds, assists, and the occasional steal and block. In a 12-man league, he's not a terrible add as like one of the worst players on your team. And then I guess Okongwu hasn't really been performing very well. Either as John Collins, but it looks like only DeAndre Hunter is going to be available in a lot of leagues. Bogdan Bogdanovic maybe. If you're in a shorter league here, but we'll move on. Atlanta doesn't really have too many fantasy assets available. The Brooklyn Nets, they're resting a lot of guys tonight because they play tomorrow night. So Dinwiddie, Claxton, Royce O'Neal, and Cam Johnson are all out tonight. So huge opportunity for Dorian Finney-Smith, who's under 10% rostered. Seth Curry, also low owned here. These guys are going to get a lot of run tonight, probably. And I believe they play tonight, tomorrow night, and Sunday. So 3 games in the next 4 days. So Finney-Smith and Curry, even Joe Harris is an interesting spot. Cam Thomas is probably going to have a pretty good game tonight as well here. So he would be a decent pickup if you can still make pickups. So keep an eye on these guys. But otherwise, players that are low owned here, I mean, Royce O'Neal needs to be picked up. Cam Johnson needs to be picked up. And then I have noticed Dorian Finney-Smith's been starting to get a little bit more minutes and more production here. He had one big 37-point game here, but maybe in a 12-man league, you can look for him. Let's move on to Boston real quick. In the Celtics, you got Al Horford, who's 50% rostered. He remains, I mean, he should be in a 10-man league. He should be rostered. I don't know why he's so low owned. He does miss games on, more often than a normal person would, but still 50% rostered, averaging 25 points per game on the year. Derek White still playing well. Robert Williams. And then after that, the Celtics are they're pretty high owned guys. Tatum, Brown, Brogdon, Derek White, all these guys are, even Marcus Smart, these guys are high owned. So I don't really see any pieces available on the Celtics to take advantage of. Let's look at Charlotte Hornets, who have kind of packed it in for the year. Dennis Smith Jr. remains the top priority here if he's available in your league. He's only 20.6% rostered, but averaging 27 points per game over the last 7 days. Didn't have a great game against the Knicks coming off the bench, but he has had a couple 30-point games and some, 24, 27, some nice numbers there. Otherwise, Mark Williams continues to get the bulk of minutes at the 5 spot here. Kind of trending down the last few games here, but he has been one of the biggest. He's been the biggest gainer since the Plumlee trade. So Mark Williams and Dennis Smith Jr. need to be rostered, and that's kind of it from the Charlotte Hornets. So we'll move on here. Let's take a peek at the Chicago Bulls. You've got, let me just do another zoomy here. You got Zach LaVine, 98% rostered, Vucevic, and DeRozan. All these guys are well owned. But after that, like it's a three-man monster for the Bulls, and after that, it's a lot of nothing. You like Patrick Williams and Caruso, Patrick Beverly, Kobe White. No, like there's only three guys on this team that are worth it in fantasy basketball right now. No other players averaging more than 20 fantasy points per game. So we'll leave the Bulls alone. Try not to dabble with Chicago too much if you can avoid it. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, their top four players, Mobley, Mitchell, Garland, and Allen, probably all already well owned. Karis LeVert might be available. He's 40% rostered. Continues to play a lot of minutes and be involved in the offense. So LeVert, if he's out there, I guess he's worth the spot here. And then same thing with the Bulls. Like they just don't have enough fantasy pieces here. Only 5 guys averaging more than 20 fantasy points per game. So we'll kind of, move on from the Cleveland Cavs. Let's look at the Mavericks. Okay, so you have, of course, Kyrie and Luka. These guys are the top owned players. Christian Wood also 83% rostered. But I see a couple players here. Tim Hardaway Jr., averaging 27 points per game over his last 7 games. High minutes player here. He does kind of score in bunches at times. Rebounds, assists, and steals are in his wheelhouse here, but he's primarily a scorer. He'll also, he'll get rebounds and assists consistently here, but it looks like he needs to be picked up in 12-man leagues. He's only 16% rostered, and again, averaging 27 points per game over his last 7 days. Not sure what's up with Maxi Kleber here. Not really sure I trust him, but he's back in the mix, getting 27 minutes per game. Decent floor there in fantasy. But that's about it. Nothing really I'm super excited about here. Reggie Bullock plays a lot of minutes, but he doesn't play very fantasy friendly. I mean, he kind of tops in at about 20 fantasy points here, so not really something I'm excited about for fantasy. Let's take a peek at Denver. And of course, the Nuggets are all about Jokic and Jamal Murray. Aaron Gordon's probably picked up, and so is Michael Porter Jr. The one guy that might be available, though, I guess there's 2 guys. Bruce Brown here, 22.5% rostered. He's averaging 24 points per game on the year, 23 his last 7 days. If you're in a 12-man league, like, this is a really good find here. He's going to, be over 20 fantasy points for his average for the most part. And then Kentavious Caldwell-Pope hasn't been playing his best ball. His scoring's been down the last 5 nights here. He's usually a little bit better. If you can see here, he had a bunch of 35-point games, a 23, a 30, a 23. So I think he can get back to here. He's just kind of slumping a little bit. But even in his slumping, you see a 22, a 17, a 17, and a 28. So KCP and Bruce Brown both need to be picked up. And then after that, it kind of drops off. So look at Bruce Brown, look at KCP if you need someone there. The Pistons, full tank mode here. Jaden Ivey's probably the only guy that's already picked up in a lot of leagues here, but you have Marvin Bagley, 22% rostered, averaging 32.8 points per game. Not sure what's up with Alec Burks here. He's been missing some games here with a foot injury. We'll kind of pass over him. James Wiseman should be picked up. He's about 15% rostered, averaging 26 points per game. Hamidou Diallo, let's see here. Wow. So they're going to shut Diallo down. He's going to be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. Probably not going to play for them anymore. So there's some opportunity here. Maybe it's Corey Joseph gets more playtime, RJ Hampton, Killian Hayes. There's going to be more opportunities at the 2 and 3 spot here. So I'm not sure who exactly gets called up, but we'll watch for this. They have a lot of guys averaging 20 fantasy points per game. There's Isaiah Livers, who might be the guy. Corey Joseph might be worth a look, but for the most part, we're not super excited about the Pistons. Let's move on to Golden State. Of course, Curry, Thompson, and Jordan Poole, high-owned players, as well as Draymond Green. Kuminga has been playing well. I'm not sure what's with the red O here. He rolled his ankle in warm-ups, but he had been on fire the last 4 games here. He had a 30-point game, a 40, and a 37. So we'll see if he can maintain these high minutes here of 28, 32, and 29. He's been playing really good lately. And then DiVincenzo continues to play well, 15% rostered, averaging 29 points per game. He's been on a nice little tear ever since late February here. So he's a highly productive player. A lot of minutes there. You can see 7 straight games over 30 minutes. And he does it on all 5 categories: rebounds, points, assists, steals, blocks, you name it. DiVincenzo's there for you. And then Kevon Looney. He's kind of been in a downtrend lately here. He's averaging 25 points per game on the year. It's kind of slumping the last few games here. But on the whole, man, he's been one of their best players. He gets double-doubles. He gets assists, steals, and blocks. Only 20% rostered, and he's a decent pickup here. And then after that, that's kind of it. Not sure what's up with Wiggins here. Just personal. He remains out. So we'll see. I continue to I guess, look at DiVincenzo there. The Houston Rockets, of course, Senjin, Kevin Porter Jr. Is he coming back? Yeah, he's back in the mix. He's just not playing. So, but he's highly owned there. Tari Eason, we talked about him at the beginning of the show. A pretty good pickup, only 12% roster. Jalen Green's owned. Kenyon Martin should be picked up in 12-team leagues, and same with Jay Sean Tate. Indy, the Pacers, of course, Halliburton, Buddy Hield, Turner are high owned players here, but TJ McConnell's kind of making a comeback. He had that nice little run for us earlier in the year, and now 4 of his last 5 games have been pretty dang good. His floor is 18. He got a ceiling in there of 34. His minutes are trending back in the right direction, so it looks like McConnell is back as a streamer option for you. And then Jordan Nwora. They acquired him from the Milwaukee Bucks. Ever since he got to the Bucks, he got a lot of opportunity right away. In his last 5 games here, he's been over 20 minutes, 5 straight games of double-digit real points, and then rebounds, assists, steals, the occasional block in there. But 5 straight games over 20 fantasy points. So keep an eye on Nwora in deeper leagues here. We'll also keep an eye on Jalen Smith, Chris Duarte. Just keep an eye on those guys. But McConnell and Nwora, for sure, look into them. On the Clippers side of things, of course, they were very active at the trade deadline. Kawhi, Paul George, and Westbrook, these guys are not going to be available. Zubac, maybe. Mason Plumlee actually has been kind of getting more value lately the last couple days here. But Zubac's healthy, so maybe he's kind of trending downwards. But he should be rostered in 12-man leagues. And then Eric Gordon is probably the last guy here that I trust. He remains a nice minutes player here, 34, 30, 33, 27. The fantasy points, he kind of is at his low games about 20 points. You see the 19, the 21, the 18, and then he does have every now and then where he can go off, especially if Kawhi or Paul George are going to be out for that night. So interested in Eric Gordon. Maybe Terrence Mann, but he's starting to slip down in the minutes department. It looks like they're going to go with Eric Gordon as the trusted guy. So for the Clippers, look out for Eric Gordon. I think that's pretty good. And then with Norman Powell out, he's undergoing treatment here. No timetable yet. So I guess, yeah, Eric Gordon's probably the guy you want from the Clippers. For the Lakers, of course, Anthony Davis, the only player that's probably owned in all formats here. But Dennis Schroeder, 31% owned. Austin Reeves is the guy here, 4.6% owned, and he's putting up 27 points per game in fantasy. Troy Brown Jr., another good ad here. He's only 1.2% owned in some really nice games. His last 4 games, he's been balling. Lots of minutes, points, rebounds, assists. So I like Reeves. I like Brown. Jared Vanderbilt. They just put Mo Bamba out, I think, for the season. So Jared Vanderbilt's going to continue to get a ton of run here. He's probably a 30% rostered, averaging 25 points per game. Malik Beasley, Achimura, these guys are probably not. I'm not too interested in them. But for sure, Reeves, Troy Brown, Schroeder. Look at Vanderbilt. Let's move on to the Grizzlies, and of course, with no John Morant, Tyus Jones is the guy. Xavier Tillman. Both these guys playing really, really well right now. That's probably the only 2 guys that are widely available in most leagues here. So Tillman, 8% rostered, 32.6 points per game in his last 7 nights. And then Tyus Jones, of course, is going to have value as long as Ja is out. Let's look at the Miami Heat. Of course, Jimmy Butler, Adebayo, Hero. These are the top owned players here. You can maybe make a case for Caleb Martin, who's been playing well, 21.9 points per game over his last 7 days, 5% rostered. And then Kevin Love, you have to kind of deal with him missing a game or 2 every now and then. But if you need someone in deeper formats, he's not playing terrible. And then after that, it gets pretty weak here. So maybe stay away from Miami. Let's look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis not playing tonight. Of course, Holiday, Lopez, and Middleton. These guys are all the top-owned Bucks at the moment. But Jevin Carter is a guy that's been getting a decent amount of opportunity lately here. He did kind of dip in minutes here the first couple games in March, but you see 22 and 35, back-to-back games of 20 points, kind of correlating with his fantasy numbers here. So any night that you see Jevin Carter is going to be starting or getting an opportunity here, he's worth a pull for a night. Grayson Allen's kind of a deep 12-man league that you can maybe pull in for a night. Bobby Portis, hoping to get him. Yeah, he finally saw his minutes tick up here, 31 minutes. So it looks like Bobby Portis is going to start getting more opportunity here. But from the Bucks, not a lot of Bucks that I'm interested in fantasy outside the top 4. And then, of course, Bobby Portis. They probably need some injuries to open up some opportunities for other guys. Let's look at the Timberwolves. Of course, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert both owned. Mike Conley probably owned. Not sure why Kyle Anderson's only 20% rostered. He remains a high minutes, high points, fantasy guy here, and he touches all 5 categories as well. So 20% rostered for Kyle Anderson, averaging 30 fantasy points per game. Naz Reid, another guy here, under 4% rostered, and he's averaging 23.3 points per game. And then Jaden McDaniels, 24.8% rostered, averaging about 21.8. So stick with those guys. I'm not sure if we're going to see Karl Anthony Towns anytime soon. Let's look at the Pelicans. Herbert Jones has been their best fantasy player over the last 7 days. 3 straight games of 30-plus fantasy points here. The minutes are peaking here at 37, 37, and 36. He's a 5-category player, so you love the hustle on defense. He's one of their best defenders. And then points, rebounds, assists have been there of late here. So 28.5% rostered, and he's playing fantastic ball right now. McCollum's owned, so is Brendan Ingram, and so is Valanciunas. But Trey Murphy here has been getting a lot of work as the 2-3, and he's put together a couple of really nice games. The last 3 games as well, 38 minutes, 37 and 38, double-digit scorer, rebounds, assists, steals, and a couple blocks in there. So if you need someone under 20% rostered, Trey Murphy, definitely intriguing. And then I'll throw in Josh Richardson as well. Let's take a peek at the New York Knicks. Brunson, Randall, 99% rostered, so you're not getting them. Maybe Emmanuel Quickly. I know he had the massive game because of the double overtime, the 75-point game. But if you look at his last 6 games or so, you see all over 20 fantasy points, a couple games in the 30s. Like, he's a must-own player in deeper formats. Josh Hart continues to play well. Mitchell Robinson's back in the fold, and that's kind of it. Like, they're kind of like a 6-man rotation, so nothing really from the Knicks is going to be widely available. The OKC Thunder, SGA's been in and out of the lineup a lot, but outside of him, of course, Josh Giddey's rostered. And then Jalen Williams, man, he's just been on a tear. He missed the other night here, but he's just been playing out of his mind lately. 50% rostered. If he's available, please go get him. And then after that, I really don't trust anybody else on this team. I guess Dieng, Dort, James, Jeremiah, Robinson, Earl. These guys are all hovering around 20 fantasy points per game here, but I don't really trust the minutes there. Unless if SGA's out, you can maybe add one of those guys for a night. Let's look at the Magic. Of course, Banchero, the most owned player here. Same with Franz Wagner. Moritz Wagner, though, he's been their second best player the last 7 days here. You see a 34, a 28, and a 28. So he's trending in the right direction. Really good scorer. Rebounds, assists, and steals are there. Markelle Fultz is highly owned. Same with Cole Anthony. Wendell Carter Jr. is out. Not sure what's going on here with that hip injury. But Jalen Suggs, an interesting option. Gary Harris, these guys are kind of 20 points per game. But as long as Wendell Carter's missing time, Moritz Wagner should be picked up. Let's take a look at the Philadelphia 76ers. Embiid, Harden, Maxey, and Tobias. You're not getting these guys. But maybe DeAnthony Melton. He's about 29% rostered, averaging 23 points per game. And then after that, there's just a bunch of nothing here. So it looks like only Melton's available for the Sixers. Now with the Kevin Durant news, he's out for at least 2 weeks. He's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks. So I'm assuming he's out even longer than that. So Booker, Durant, Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, these guys, you're not picking them up off the waiver wire. But with Durant out, that's going to put Josh Okogie back into a healthy amount of minutes in the starting lineup, who he really blossomed. So after the trade, he had this run of 47 points, 34, 28, 39. He was really hot after the trade, after they sent away Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges, and Durant wasn't back yet. So look for Josh Okogie on the wire. He's under 5% rostered. Terrence Ross, another interesting guy here, who had a really nice game last night. He puts up 24 real points, 35 fantasy points. He's going to get more runs. So look for like a committee of like Okogie and Ross to be inserted into the lineup without Durant. And then after that, Cam Payne's back. That's kind of about it. Maybe Torrey Craig gets more minutes, but for now, stick with Okogie, stick with Terrence Ross. The Trailblazers, of course, Lillard and Grant, you're not getting them. Nurkic is coming back. Let's see. He had 1 game last night, so that's good to see him. Hopefully he can continue to stack games. But Cam Reddish has been the 3rd best player on this team, 12.8% rostered, and he's been playing a lot of minutes. You see 35, 40, 37, 33, 6 straight games over double digits. He's going to chip in rebounds, assists, and steals, the occasional block. A nice pickup here if you're in a 12-man league. And then Matisse Thybulle, we know he's a really good defender. Looks like Drew Eubanks is probably going to be on the downward now that Nurkic is back. And then after that, it gets a little murky. So look for Cam Reddish, I would say, and then maybe consider Matisse Thybulle. The Spurs, um, these guys are not really trying to do much this year. Not sure what's up with Keldon Johnson. He had a bad game in his first game back here, but he's already 84% rostered. But Jeremy Sohan, 8% rostered, playing fantastic. You see a 48-point game here. His minutes are around 30 minutes per game, playing some of his best ball of the season right now. Pick him up if you can. Zach Collins remains a pretty nice play as well. 13% rostered, averaging 37 points per game. Devontae Graham, only 8% rostered. He's averaging 29 points per game. And then Keita Bates-Diop, 26 points per game, 1.5% rostered. So the Spurs have some juice here. If you guys need some players here, like I'm looking at, we got Bassey, Brownham, Diop, all these guys under 3% rostered, and they're all averaging more than 23 points per game. So again, look at the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys here for the Spurs, worth a pickup for the rest of the season at least. The Sacramento Kings, Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, these guys are ballers. Kevin Huerter and Barnes, you're probably not going to get them, but maybe you can get Trey Lyles, who's been playing nice for them as the backup for 1.4% rostered, averaging 26 points per game over the last 7 days. Maybe Keegan Murray, 18 points per game, but he's probably highly owned. And then Malik Monk, he goes in flashes. I don't know if it's worth playing roulette with him. The Toronto Raptors, I mean, their top 5 is owned. You can maybe consider Chris Boucher if he's there, but pretty much all the Raptors are taken here. So I don't see anybody available. The Utah Jazz, so Clarkson's out tonight, so that's why he's got the red O. Markkanen, 99% rostered. Walker Kessler still way too low, 51% rostered, way too low. But Chris Dunn's going to get some run here. He's been playing well, 30 fantasy points per game, and he's under 12% rostered. Same with Kelly Olynyk, only 30% rostered, but he's 28.7 points per game. And then Talon Horton-Tucker, he had a really good game the other night. 34 minutes. Looks like he got the start tonight as well. So keep an eye on THT, because as long as Clarkson and Sexton are out, THT and Dunn are going to be useful for fantasy. And then maybe consider Rudy Gay if you need someone in deeper formats. And then last but not least, the Washington Wizards. You're not getting Porzingis or Bradley Beal or Kuzma. But after that, check out DeLon Wright, 26% rostered, averaging 35.8 points per game his last 7 days. When one of their best players, his minutes are peaking at the right time right now. Points are up, rebounds are up, assists are up, steals are up, blocks, you get him every now and then, but he's just a really useful player. 3 position eligibility. Can't believe he started at the power forward spot a couple times, but DeLon Wright, one of the best pickups right now. Look into Daniel Gafford. I know he's kind of sporadic, but 10% rostered, averaging 19 points per game. And then Denny Avdia, his points per game are kind of weird. But he does kind of go in spurts. I'm probably going to end up cutting Avdia for next week. But that's it. I just wanted to run through and give you guys the full NBA landscape here for fantasy basketball. Let you guys know who's available, who you should be adding. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. Thank you guys for your time. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you're new to the channel. And yeah, we'll see you guys later. Peace.